I'd like to call the January 12th Sarasota Manatee MPO Technical Advisory Committee meeting to order. Grace, do we have a quorum?
Yes.
All right, thank you. First up, Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise on the flag. Here we go. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic, one nation, under God, liberty. Next item is public comment. Do we have any members of the public that wish to offer comments? Seeing none, our next item is approval of minutes from our October meeting. Everyone reviewed the minutes, and do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Have a motion to approve, Paul Glisson, and seconded by Paul Wiggins. Our next agenda items are our action items. First, under action items is Transportation Improvement Program amendments. This is the item that we had an addendum for it. Can staff clarify whether it's an actual addendum or if it's a replace all? If it looks like it is a replacement, we'll just be acting on the so-called addendum.
Christy Smith is here with FDOT and will be presenting this item, but it looks like it's a replacement.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Good morning, Christy Smith. Work with District 1 FDOT, managing the liaisons. This is my first TAC. Pam Barr, who was liaison, her last day with the department was Thursday, so I'm the warm body. We have a significant number of tip-stiff amendments this month broken out by county. Most of them being transit awards or changes. Are there any questions? Do I need to go line by line?
I think only if there are questions.
Okay.
I've gone through them and don't have any questions, so it's just what the other TAC members do. Does TAC members want a more detailed discussion? We good? Right. Staff is asking for action on this item.
Make a motion to recommend MPO board approval of the amendments.
Thank you.
Second.
Got a motion to recommend approval to the MPO board, Alvin Marie Morales, and seconded by Paul Wiggins. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, motion passes unanimously. Our next item is 2022 to 2026 safety target setting. If you have any, should be presented.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. New year, new safety targets. So this is a refresher. This is something that we adopt annually, and we submit the safety targets that we have to February. For safety, we track 5 key performance measures: the number and rate of fatalities, the number and rate of serious injuries, and new setup. Names. And the number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries, and the rates are calculated per 100 daily vehicles. So why do we do this? It's federally mandated. We have to set these safety targets, and MPOs can choose to support the statewide safety targets or come up with their own for the planning area. And just as a quick refresher, because it's annually and there might be new basic here. Safety targets are a statement of policy direction and priorities for the MPO, and a framework for monitoring trends and how we basically rate ourselves performance, and it's a way to coordinate safety efforts on research. What safety targets are not, we don't gain extra by meeting the safety targets or lose funding for not meeting them. And it's certainly not a replacement for all the data-driven safety work that we do. Collection, and it's certainly not a prediction or guarantee of future crash outcomes. So the MPO for the last several years has adopted and followed the state guidelines for Vision Zero, which is essentially a statement that no death or serious injury is acceptable on our transportation network. And part of why we do that is one, to align with the state and also provide a clear public facing commitment to safety. Destination Zero. So we have a whole bunch of pages and documents on our website about reaching that, and it certainly sounds a lot better than destination 90 fatalities and actually more serious injuries. So this it reinforces a shared statewide commitment with other MPOs and FDOT, and setting it the target of 0 kind of pushes us for continuous improvement and allows us to look at every project as safety improvements. We wouldn't theoretically want to be like, okay, well, we've met our target, so we can maybe fund some maybe unsafe stuff. So what do other Florida MPOs do? Back in 2025, everyone supported the state target except for 6 MPOs, and so those other approaches, which we have been proposed here by this board, are percent reduction for prior years, percent reductions to reach 0 by a certain year, or this one, especially uncomfortable, is maintaining our current rate in the face of population growth. And it's kind of accepting that fatalities and serious injuries aren't. So FDOT adopted their safety targets back in August and are continuing with their target 0 initiative of 0 fatalities, 0 serious injuries. And the MPOs opposed safety targets are aligning with that, with 0 fatalities, 0 serious injuries, 0 non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. So for the projected 5-year rolling average that we're in, we're looking at 111 fatalities, 774 serious injuries, and 164 non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries, which is showing a decline from previous years, but certainly have a long way to go to hit 0. And as part of this, we also the MPO board also supports the transit safety targets from Breeze and MCAT, and those are up here with so for MCAT, 0 fatalities, 0 injuries, 12 safety events total for their fixed route service, 0 for paratransit, but 5 safety events total and 0.8 safety events for each. And similar for Breeze, it's for fixed route, 1 fatality, 12 serious injuries, or 12 injuries, and at 1.6. I don't know. These are, you can read them. That could take a while to get through. But obviously the MPO is supportive of setting continuing the destination 0 approach we've been doing. And that's our proposal, but we're certainly open to discussion on approaches. That is that.
So when the packet was distributed, the MCAT numbers were still pending, and so what you've shown in the slideshow today are their proposed finals, and in both cases, these are maybe not goals as much as they are estimated events expected, or how does that work?
Yeah, I believe that's kind of just I think Camera or Express viewing. We just support our transit partners. We don't really have much insight to how those are come up with or anything.
And the transit
Yeah.
staff answer that either.
Yeah, they're based on past performance, past events. My understanding.
Same here.
Thank you. Are there other questions about the safety targets in general or the transit? Right, there's no more, yes?
So I've got a question. If you flip over to the forecast, I think those are helpful since that was a discussion from last year. So understanding if we're gonna call the target policy of what we want to happen, but then have those projected forecast of what we think is gonna happen. Is this also part of what gets sent to the MPO board for their review?
And they'll certainly have access to the projected data.
Okay.
So they'll be aware of what the forecast is.
I think that forecast is helpful, especially like if you look at the lower part of the slide that says no death or serious injury is acceptable, but we're acknowledging that.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of work to do.
Other questions or comments, from committee? Now, is asking for action on this to recommend approval of the targets to. I'm sitting in this chair today, keep it for you. Thank you, Anthony.
Second.
I have a motion to recommend MPO board approval of the safety targets. Anthony Friedman made the motion, Alvy Marie seconded. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Next item are the 2025 top 10 accomplishments and 2026 strategic priorities. If Grace and Nina, who's going to be Grace?
I'm going to go first.
Thank you, Grace.
Hi, I'm Grace. Public Involvement Coordinator for the MPO. Since it's January, I'll be giving our top 10 accomplishments from 2025. Just a quick overview, and the full list is linked in your agenda packets. First is the 2050 Long Range Transportation Plan adoption. We completed the last 2 phases of outreach and development last year, and the plan was officially adopted by the board in October. We also completed the quadrennial federal certification review back in July, and were recognized with 3 noteworthy practices. We had several priorities funded in the draft tentative work program and advanced our regional planning studies, which includes a few new studies that were scoped last year and are actually being kicked off this month. And next is public engagement. I love this one. We hosted a public workshop, 2 events and surveys, and continued our newsletter and social media with some more creative content. And for safety, we launched the Destination Zero blog and video series, and rolled out an organizational safety culture improvement plan. If you haven't seen the video series, highly recommend watching it. You can see it on our YouTube, the website, and the blog is great too. For transit coordination was strong, including the annual evaluation of the transportation disadvantage program for Manatee and Sarasota counties. And then there were some administrative and organizational advancements. We onboarded new general planning consultants and completed a successful office relocation. MPO staff presented and attended several conferences, including AMPO, which is Association of Metropolitan Planning Organizations. Ryan is presenting in that photo. And Nina presented there too. And also TRB, Transportation Research Board, and some other ones. And then finally, we had 27 committee meetings and 5 board meetings in 2025. Those are the highlights of the 2025 top 10 accomplishments. Thank you all for your collaboration and support, as always. And now here's the strategic priorities. Yes.
So now that we've looked back at what we have accomplished in 2025, we're looking ahead at what we would like to accomplish and prioritize in 2026. So we'll go through this very quickly. On the planning end of things, we have our annual mandates, the performance targets, safety targets, our project priority list that we'll be reviewing today. The tentative work program, developing the TIP, and our ongoing collaboration with partners. As Grace mentioned, we have kicked off or will be kicking off this week several new planning studies. The organizational safety culture improvement plan is really sort of a next step to the organizational safety culture workshop that we did with FHWA at the beginning of 2024, I believe. So we think that this is an important next step, and it'll also get us set up for a strategic plan for the MPO moving forward as well. We're working on a regional freight analysis, a regional transit feasibility study, and a watershed and transportation asset analysis. And so we'll be reaching out to you all for outreach events, engagement opportunities, and stakeholder workshops. As far as the implementation side of things, we will be kicking off a project prioritization process update in the next couple of weeks. So this will be taking a closer look at our project scoring, the weights, the factors that go into our prioritization process, as well as the way in which we are submitting projects. And so we're hoping to streamline that a little bit further, making it a little bit easier for you all, but also for MPO staff to track projects. So we'll be letting you know when that happens. We also have a new contract with Locus, who presented to you all last year. So we are getting started. We'll be onboarding with them in the next month or so. And our jurisdictional partners will have access to this data platform as well. So we will let you know when we have that ready to share. And then of course, implementing the recently adopted long-range transportation plan, which currently has all of the completed MPO planning initiatives integrated into it, and many of those projects, some of those projects prioritized in the cost feasible plan. On the administration end, we'll be updating our UPWP this year, going through our certification, policy reviews, meetings, and working on our next top 10 accomplishments, which you'll hear from Grace next year. And then ongoing engagement, board orientation, our CAC orientations, working on our safety education campaign. Currently, we have those educational videos that we've been rolling out and doing sort of semi-monthly blogs, but we are looking for ways to expand that program as well. So we'll be continuing that this year. Continuing on a Gulf Coast Trail coordination, participating with our partners to move projects forward, to get the priorities in the Sun Trail alignment studies ongoing and into the pipeline or finished. And then working with our more regional partners on the Gulf Coast Trail Alliance, which was kicked off last year as well. And then outreach for studies, as always. So that's just an overview of strategic priorities. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace and Nina. For the committee members, are there any questions, comments? All right, now, again, we're asking for the committee's action on this item. I want have us to recommend board affirmation of the accomplishments and priorities.
Move to recommend.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Our next item is the transportation investment analysis. We do have Mr. Saraceno.
But Nathan.
So we're finally wrapping up the transportation investment analysis, which just as a quick primer, and for Dane, I'll get into more, is we were taking a data-driven approach at transportation funding in the region and how well it aligned with MPO priorities, and also taking a look at project delivery, identifying common roadblocks or issues that may occur, as well as part of the study was interviewing with key stakeholders and basically developing some recommendations to better streamline project delivery and really get projects from the planning to construction pipeline. And that, Nathan, you can take it away from there.
Thank you. So Nathan Gauss with Kielsen, Franco Saraceno was supposed to be here today, which is why I have a computer for notes. They kind of last minute switched. So as Nick said, a lot of what it's doing is there's a large data analysis going in and looking at what's going on with list of priority projects, looking at a couple individual projects and figuring out what is why aren't projects getting done as fast as we would like them to, or are they getting done as fast as they can? So there's 78 projects in NPO's 2025 list of priority projects that have been listed for multiple years. Some have been on the project for 9 years. I'm going to start off giving kind of the data of trends and where projects are. There is nothing to indicate why that data exists without getting into the individual projects. There may be very well good reasons. So I want to clarify that. So the goal of this is to improve the coordination between the NPO and implementing agencies with respect to achieving local priorities. Overview the analysis. We looked at 10 years of DOT state transportation improvement programs, tracked the evolution of projects in the STIPs, examined 10 years of NPO list of priority projects, project priorities compared to that STIP, tracked the LOPP and the STIPs, and then interviewed FDOT staff, get their perspective, as well as looking at NPO to try to bring perspectives together and see where things are missing, where things can be improved, and what's going well. So regional context, not gonna spend a ton of time, if you're well aware, in District 1, 12 counties, 6 NPOs, 12,400 square miles. The Sarasota Manatee NPO, 1,300 square miles, 1,100 center line miles of roadway, 2 counties. So we look at this, the overview of the analysis. Your y-axis is the number of projects, your x-axis is the number of STIPs. So that number, so 80 projects are in one STIP, for instance. In the past 10 years, 147 projects were carried over in more than 5 STIPs. 43 are carried in more than 8 STIPs.
Oh.
Where's the mouse?
Starting
Hold on.
at
The mouse doesn't move right away.
So if you think about it, normally 3 to 5 is pretty normal. That's a like what I call like a perfect work program, right? Like it's gone through the process, it's gotten that. So when we look at that, 310 projects are in 5 or less STIPs. That's pretty good out of the total. So 310 out of 450 have gotten through the work program really with no issues in a normal work program process. 147 projects in more than 5 STIPs and 43 in more than 8 STIPs. So we also looked at what was programmed versus the actual expenditures. On average over the last 10 years, 82% of what was programmed was actually spent. Back in 2015, for whatever reason, there was actually more spent on Sarasota Manatee project than was programmed, but since then there's been a consistent lower trend. In 2022, for example, 78 million less was spent than what was programmed. So if we get into it a little bit further, not just the projects, but the list of priority projects, we see a few similar trends. So we get to 36 of the list of priority projects were in more than 5 STIPs. There's some assumptions we can make, right? So like some of those that 10, we can either look at they're being deprioritized, or there's issues with the project and it's just not being abandoned or closed out. Maybe priorities have changed. It's not speaking to why it's there, but there is a clear trend where there are some that we want to look at to see if we're doing what we're supposed to, right? That we're coordinating, that there's not something that in our process that may need to be addressed. So we're looking at 30 projects in 5 or less STIPs, 36 projects in more than 5 STIPs, and 22 projects in more than 8 STIPs. On average, with the list of priority projects, we see that 63% of the money programmed for the list of priority projects is spent in the planned year. And while the discrepancy is small, see, only in 2018, only 5% of programmed was unspent. But since then, that gap has grown larger. In 2022 and 2023 combined, less than 30% of programs actually spent. So now if we look at SU funds, we found that 86% of SU funds are programmed on NPO priorities. 30% of the SU programmed on those priorities is being spent. These are, once again, the trends. So from there, we're seeing, hey, there's a bust. We're curious why the bust has. Let's go in and talk. Let's look at certain projects, see where some of those challenges were. Some of these projects we were talking with, for instance, Kevin Engel at DOT, and he's like, hey, you know, this is where we have some challenges. Some of these projects, this is the ones we want to look at, and got some good feedback on what may be going on. So the first one to look at US 41 Fruitville Road. It was first prioritized. So these are ones that have been completed. Oops. So US 41 and Fruitville Road. Some of the things that were recognized as wins, things that were working out really well. The city was very committed to that project, and there was a willingness to compromise by delaying other priorities. That was seen as instrumental to completion, where we're coming up with challenges. So let's really focus on getting this one done. Recognition that there was resource limitations and there was a need to prioritize and focus on project delivery. We all know that when we get into this, nothing is perfect in our world. There's always going to be something coming up. So being clear about what your priorities are and focusing was seen as a success. The second one, the I-75 interchange improvements, it was completed 2 years. One of the keys to this is that priorities were aligned between City of Northport, the MPO, and FDOT. There was a clear focus in all parties to getting that project done. And then on Honore, the ITS project, looking at mitigating congestion, that was one where we're stepping back from really big capacity projects and looking at something that's simpler or easier to implement to be able to cause improvements in the operations of them. Looking at in-progress projects. So the Palmetto Trails Network Plan was first developed in 2019, and it's been around for 5 years. The project is dependent on local coordination and prioritization of specific trail improvements, but it's not progressed beyond initial system planning efforts. The project initially prioritized connection to the Sun Trail as envisioned in a Reconnecting Communities pilot grant, but the study focused on neighborhood multimodal connections. Without a centralized connection to the broader regional trail system, the project is fragmented without a clear path moving forward. The combination of federal grants, state appropriation, and FDOT funding complicate the intent and delivery. So that mixing seems to be causing some challenges there. Second one, 10th Avenue. It's a complete street project. It's appeared in 11 STIPs. It's repeatedly changed hands between FDOT and locals, and it underwent several redesigns as the funding changed. The repeated redesign of the project prohibited programming of the construction phase. So it's one where, for whatever reason, as it keeps moving around, priorities change, requirements change, and it keeps undergoing redesign to the point where there's not the confidence or the ability to put the construction funding on it and move forward. US 41 sidewalks from Blackburn Point to State Road 72 has been in the STIP 11 years. But there's repeated delays, and as delays come, I'm sure you're all aware what construction costs are doing right now. As a delay comes, there's not just the cost of delaying it, but there's also the increased estimate of construction cost as inflation or whatever else occurs to drive those prices. The MPO commitment grew proportionally over that period. The initial project extent was segmented into multiple smaller projects to make them more financially feasible, making the original project difficult to track. So that's part of the issue there is, in one way, it's a victim of success in the sense that it's difficult to get the entire big project. So you get a bunch of little ones that you can attack more incrementally and a little bit easier. But then the challenge then is we're still not getting the larger one. Portions of it have been completed with over 15 million of construction spending on various segments between 72 and McIntosh. And segmentation of the project, just reiterating, helped contribute to partial completion of the originally envisioned improvements. Now, obstacles to project delivery. Some of the big ones that we came across was the funding and lifecycle planning. Project scoping was a really big one. Utility coordination, cost estimates, those are ones that we run into in any of our projects. Phasing and scheduling, coordination, communication, and legislative amendments were a lot of the big things that came out. There's a lot of players, it's worth acknowledging, there's a lot of players involved. They all have different priorities, they all have different roles. And it's all, in your business, we all know the technical part of it's the easy part, the communication, the coordination, Priorities is usually the difficult part. So looking at state, MPO, local agencies, the private utility companies and businesses, and the general public sentiment. With project scoping, a lot of the feedback we got is that sometimes the project scopes aren't as detailed as they need to be. There's a little bit of an idea of a project that's wanted, but not outlined as well. And in that communication, when it's received and started to be worked on, that scope may grow past what was originally intended, because there's not a communication that's happening to say, this is what we want, and we want something like this, not necessarily like this. So that changing, and then with different priorities, sometimes there's a request to change the scope, right? As commissions change, as individuals change, the agencies, and you go through that project life cycle, there's recommended changes because somebody else has a different opinion of how it's to be approached. So looking at solutions, clear goals, scope, and responsibilities to be defined early. Basically, this is the project that we want. This is why, and kind of leave it unless there's something that really kills that project. Following a formal scoping checklist, just all parties agree, like what needs to be in there. If you're going to prioritize a project, what does that need to look like? Have all the parties agree on it so that you can get to a successful conclusion. And then coordination on the final scope to just make sure that the final expectations are met. Utility code coordination, this is nothing new, right? But it is worth mentioning. Utilities will kill a project. So this is one where when you're in the preliminary planning phases and you want to submit something, making sure that we're also evaluating what utilities are there, not just what it wants to look like, but go ahead and get some of that coordination and initial investigation done so that when it gets to design, you're not running into, oh my gosh, there's a gas line here, we can't really do much of anything with it, or there's a massive relocation cost. Cost estimates and rising costs. So having fleshed out estimates, right? Going back to that scoping conversation, better scopes lead to better estimates as well. When you're dealing with a planning level estimate, you're looking at scale of millions or hundreds of thousands of dollars, getting more into a more refined engineer's estimate using current costs. I was in a training the other day. The state have the historical cost data, but there's also a new interface now with more granular, better, more accurate data that you can refine specifically what you're looking for. I think they did it through the LTAP. So if you're looking for that, it's probably on the recorded webinars. It was very interesting. So using that bid and cost history, looking at inflation, adding contingencies. A lot of our projects, when we're looking at design and doing design estimates, we're adding some pretty massive contingencies to it because in summary, construction costs right now are escalating to the point where it's hard to predict what they're going to be in a few years. And then regularly revisiting those estimates, make sure every year we are revisiting and bringing them up to date, making sure we're moving money around as needed. Phasing and scheduling. There's challenges advancing small projects and coordinating multiple projects on segments with various needs. Clear communication channels. We repeatedly heard that it's hard to get in contact with person X or person Y. It seems to be consistent. Like I said, the technical part's easy, the communication part's hard. So making sure that if your project staff, if you're involved with it, it's something that you're looking for, that we are communicating with all parties involved and working through that phasing and scheduling, and you're on board with it. We're staying engaged. That coordination communication. I know there has been a volunteer to bring project managers to MPO meetings. That might be a good way. Looking at making sure, if nothing else, there is a communication protocol, a line of communication for this project. So if the MPO is prioritizing something, let's say with a local agency, we know this is the FDOT contact, here's the MPO contact, here's the local agency contact. So that local agency contact, for instance, may not know everything about the project, but they are committed to making sure that they get to the right person when that communication comes in. In summary, we want to establish clear goals early in the project development process, clarify scope, cost, and utility coordination, granularity. We don't want to, if we have a pie in the sky idea, we put it in. We can't be surprised when the end outcome is something different, a little bit different or a little bit more than what we anticipated. We need to be very clear in what we're communicating on all sides to make sure that we're getting what we want. Identifying project champions, going back to that communication. So making sure that any agency involved or interested in that project has a champion that is monitoring and available for response, right? So if you call the MPO and you know the Nick's your champion or whoever you call Nick, it might be Grace, right? No, right? Nick's going to make sure that he gets the right person. And then making sure that there's participation in the MPO committee meetings. Like you have a place to talk about it. It's already set up, it's established, making sure we get there, we have those conversations. So our next steps, adapting the 2050 long-range transportation plan, kick off a major prioritization update with stakeholders, implementing a more formal internal project tracking process. That way, when things start to kind of move off the rails, we're more aware of it when it happens earlier in the process, instead of remembering that, hey, you know, it's been a few years, maybe we should put a little effort into that. And then persistent communication, coordination, collaboration. Ultimately, nothing here is surprising. The big message of takeaway is we want to do our homework. We want to make sure we're talking to each other. Any questions? Thank you.
So for staff, for this item and the next one, the next one even more so is more just a report. Why are we being asked to act on them? Is it important to adopt them as part of the LRTP or something different?
I was just gonna say, it's just a recommend adoption of the study.
So I wouldn't necessarily be an adoption into the LRTP, but what we are looking to do is take what we learned from the investment analysis and then build on it by improving like our prioritization process and really more clearly strategizing MPO activities moving forward. So for example, with the prioritization update, we want to take what we heard from our stakeholders and see how we can improve the project submission process and tracking projects moving forward. So by taking this to the board, it basically makes sure that they're seeing it, for improving us moving forward with it.
Yes, Paul.
I was just gonna say, so is this more of a, you're asking us to recommend the recommendations that have come out of the analysis and not necessarily the reports? Because I don't understand why you recommend a report but not a study, more so than just the outcomes of.
Well, the report ends with recommended strategies. Nathan touched on it in the presentation. So I get it to an extent. It just wasn't clear to me why it wasn't just a report as opposed to an action.
Yeah.
Perhaps, I don't know if Ryan and Dave have any other recommendations, but this could perhaps be recommend MPO board approval of the investment analysis to.
Yeah, I would say support findings, the conclusions made from the study. I don't think you're necessarily supporting, you know.
I'm okay with it either way. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna challenge.
No,
whether or not.
it doesn't necessarily need to be,
Understanding why.
doesn't necessarily need to be worded that way. I would say it could be just done in the essence of these are the findings that we made, and then supporting the process as we continue to clarify this process, because I think this is an evolving process. It's not just a standalone effort. So yeah, you can word it however you'd like. It doesn't necessarily have to be adopting the plan, for example.
And then probably for Nathan, at the beginning, you started talking about how long things have been in the STIP. And it's not hard to read that 5 years sounds like the sweet spot, and anything more than that is too much. But generously assuming we've got a NEPA decision and we've started design, and right away shows up in year 5, we're waiting 4 more years to see it. It's taking 4 more years to spend the right of way, 4 more years doing construction engineering. So 8 years isn't out of the norm for a local project priority. So why is 5 sweet? I mean, there are projects that'll do it. Sidewalk projects that are well prepared will get right through the program and so on, but not everything will. In fact, a lot of big projects absolutely won't. So
And that's why we were talking at the beginning that it's not indicative that there's necessarily an issue, but we're looking at for broader trends. The 3 to 5 is just where the work program is programmed, and that's where we have, I guess, easier data without getting into the granularity of each project. It was more of looking for flags of interest, right? There are, I think, trends both ways. There's projects that have gotten derailed that are, how do I rephrase that? Those projects that last in those higher year numbers, there are perfectly legitimate projects there for the reasons you said. Viva right away, etc. But those are also where the large concentration of projects with challenges are sitting as well. So I think that looking at the 3 to 5 is kind of like just the default of that's where we're putting our work program as opposed to like an out year funding where it kind of just sits. And it was more of, like I said, looking at the trend. There's always an expectation, I think, that you're going to move projects. But it's what I guess the best we have without getting into every individual project to see.
Okay, at the risk of belaboring it. So the STIP is the stitching together of all of the district work programs, and the local project priorities come into that program typically in year 5, occasionally year 3 or 4. But if they come in year 5, it will show up in 4 work programs before we can touch the money, because we're not in a scenario where we can advance funds very often anymore or anything like that. So any amount of production time that's meaningful, even 2 or 3 years, is automatically going to push you over 5 because you're waiting 4 just to touch the money. And so I guess present it the way you present it, but to try and create a perception that 5 is too long is. I don't think that's is risky, I would say, in terms of managing expectations.
So I don't think that just the study is necessarily the statistics. The statistics are there largely to show what was done, to show like this is what we did, this is what we found. It's not a conclusion in the sense of here's a smoking gun. It's intended to be more of, I guess, what we're finding. I think some of the things are useful, right? Where we see like the difference between what's programmed and what's spent, saying, okay, well, is there a process change to be looking at? Is there a place where more things are being rolled? Where we got into, this is what we're finding. The meat of the study is finding this is where problems lie. And that's where we had the conversation with, we had it with the MPO. We also sat down with FDOT board program and program management, and we sat down with FDOT design and talked through some of those, hey, of these projects, here's some ones, because we identified a number of ones that were kind of hanging out there. We went through and with them like, hey, like we have these projects. Which of these do you feel is, for lack of a better word, like a problem project? But they identified ones that Dave sent out. We talked with Dave, his history of ones like, hey, let's look into this, ones that we know that there's problems. And then ones that we know work really well. And then the conversation then of what happened on this. Well, okay, well, like this didn't really need to be our project. This needed to be a different type of project, or there was utility issues. Like that's where I guess I would say the meat of the study comes in, is that conversation of what actually went wrong. The statistics are more of, it'd be like a metal detecting. Like if we're looking for something in the ground, we find it, we dig it up, and we're trying to find, okay, is this valuable? Is it not? That's where the meat of the study is, that conversation part.
So the statistics actually don't tell the story, and in my opinion, they should just be downplayed or removed altogether and just focus on the thing, because there'll be 2-year projects that should have taken 2 years that took 5. And just because it was 5 or less doesn't mean it's okay. We should still figure out what went wrong there. And then there'll be eternal projects. It feels like, say, 15th Street and Manatee County is just, it's
hopefully out of these recommendations, some concise, actionable, things we can do to try to facilitate expeditious project delivery. If we have the money, then why aren't these projects getting built on the timetable that we originally thought? And we took a look, and there were a variety of reasons, including utilities, including lack of communication, maybe a jurisdiction had too many other priorities, and so they didn't focus on what was funded in the work program. So, and we did not want it to be any kind of a finger pointing or negative. We wanted, what can we learn from the projects that didn't go well, and what can we learn from the projects that moved right through and did go well. Out of central office at FDOT, there's a new emphasis. They just adopted a policy that they don't want to put money onto projects that they don't think can go from, planning to construction in less than, in more than 8 years. They want to focus on deliverable projects, and we try to do that too, but we can improve, and these recommendations should help us get there.
And I took it in
Help
that,
you get your projects.
and I took it in that spirit, and the report ends there with actionable strategies that I think could help when they get implemented. The stats up front are misleading and hand waving, and so I recommend you downplay that when you deliver the message and focus on the essence of it. Some things take a long time because we don't do these things as well as we could. Here's a way to do it better. Yes.
I think the stats are helpful in showing the risk of a project. If there are definitely ones where you have to have the right of way and it takes a long time, and those ones are gonna take a lot of time. But maybe help highlighting some of the quick builds of like, we saw the safety stats, and if we know that, if we follow all these procedures of right of way and everything, it's gonna be 10 years until that needle changes. And so while a quick build project might not be perfect, good now is better than perfect in 10 years. And giving additional words to help identify schedule risk that otherwise someone's like, well, of course I want all this right of way for this perfect project, and helping tell that story in a different way.
And I would add, my 2 cents on it is, this hasn't really been done in this essence before, right? So I think starting with the number of steps was the general consensus baseline. I think the Nathan's point, we started seeing things transpire. We looked at program versus actuals. We saw a significant change where, in general, the STIP was delivering at a higher rate than TIP, right? And why was that, right? A lot of that had to do with the project priorities. So state project on a state road are a lot better delivering those, quite frankly. When you get into the local roads and how we're utilizing SU dollars and how we're spending those on local roads with state as partner, we typically succeed at a lower rate, quite frankly. And that is what the statistics show. And it gets into your point of how do we deliver at a higher rate? And some of those findings come out of it. So I agree. I don't think we need to make a huge deal about the number of steps. Really correct. A bridge project could be in there for 20 years, but then there's also some, to your point, that are 5 or 6 that are just holding $10,000 a year as kind of a placeholder. Why is that the case? Well, the project's just not moving forward. So I would say there's even a third level, not even if it's just programmed or actual, it's how much is actually needed to complete the project and how much is actually programmed. Even if we're spending the actual, it's way under what's actually needed to finish that project. So there's more layers. We're going to continue to do more evaluation on the front, but I agree with Melissa's point as well, is if we know we're going down that road and we're getting ourselves into a very drawn out full NEPA right-of-way acquisition process, then it's going to take a significant amount of time. Is there ways around that in a way that can be more efficient? So those are some of the starting points, and I will continue to let this evolve, and I'm sure we'll be back with more on this front.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions or comments? Right, staff is asking for committee action.
Here's the recommendation we did, the recommend that the board support implementation of the recommendations.
So moved.
All right, have a motion. Did I hear a second? Yeah, that did.
So
All right. Thank you. We have a motion and a second.
I just want to clear, so the motion is what Dave stated?
Yes.
So the
Okay.
motion will be to recommend that MPO board approve implementation of the strategies identified in the transportation investment analysis.
Okay,
Nobody.
thank you, because that's different from what's written.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on a motion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Our next item is the safety countermeasures performance monitoring. Nick, I believe it's you again.
Yeah, as it is. So. Yeah, safety countermeasure performance monitoring study. You may remember this from last year when I was pinging a lot of our TAC members for local projects. And basically the meat of the study came out of a desire to see not only which safety countermeasures implemented in the region are working, but also kind of to gather a comprehensive inventory of all the safety projects that have been implemented. Because we certainly are aware of, our priority projects, what that's doing, but we know the locals do all sorts of good safety work. And So one of the major goals of this was to inventory all of that and then to kind of come up with a framework to analyze these projects and see how they're improving or the effect they're having on both safety and mobility. So through communication with the FDOT Safety Office and you all, we were able to identify 123 safety projects. And then for the safety data, we just pulled everything that Signal Corps crash database had available, and for mobility, we looked at FDOT's RIDIS system. And for safety metrics, we were looking at both all crashes as well as types of crashes and the fatal and serious injury crashes. So the methodology that we came up with was to measure safety. We wanted a 3-year before and after period for these projects and kind of creating a buffer and then joining the crashes to that and then dividing it by the construction year. So because of that, we were able to get 38 projects that had a 3-year before and after window, and with many more on the way. This is kind of a framework that we want to kind of refine going forward, because when I was soliciting projects from everyone, obviously they typically skewed towards more recent, which it's very good to have, but we weren't able to do the safety analysis on. For mobility, we just looked at the 1 year before and after the construction was applied, and due to that smaller window, we were able to get 72 projects subject to the mobility analysis. And just to kind of visualize that, the map on the left was all the safety countermeasures, and then that's just an example of one project where you have the buffer applied, and then you see what falls into the buffer, points being crashes, and then of course manual QC. There were some that, you know, maybe fell within the buffer, but really shouldn't have been related to the project. And then with those crash points, we categorized the before and after years. And without getting, it's a little hard not to get too data heavy with this, but we saw overall as as expected with the growing region and higher traffic volumes, we did see a net increase in total crashes, but decline in serious injury crashes, which is something we've certainly been seeing at the regional level through like the safety metric reporting that we go through a couple of times a year. Some of the biggest gains are, the decline in KSI crashes, which is the intent of these safety projects, and nighttime KSI also decreasing. So obviously we categorized the type of safety countermeasure project, and one of the big takeaways is that roundabouts consistently reduced severe crashes wherever they were implemented, including nighttime and obviously angle crashes, which they're a little harder to get into with a roundabout as opposed to a four-way intersection. Intersection improvements had a similar story where it reduced both the frequency and severity of crashes. So unlike roundabouts where we might see a slight uptick in total crashes, but a decrease in KSI, with all the intersection improvement projects we looked at, it was a decrease in both. Lighting projects were associated with a decrease in nighttime KSI crashes as well. We had one sidewalk project that fell within the sort of analysis range, and this kind of shows one of the limitations of the study. It's hard to say if like for that particular sidewalk project, there were no bicyclist or pedestrian KSI crashes before or after, but on the roadway next to it, there was a decrease in crashes. And similarly with the shared bike lane or the share road projects, we saw more moderate bike type gains. For mobility results, really didn't see much change other than the roundabouts, which were associated with as intended lower speeds, but a higher sort of consistency. So there were less like backups at rush hour, for example, but it certainly better at moving traffic according to all the metrics that we looked at, which was level of time, reliability, the speed ratio, and TI. So next step, continuous monitoring, we certainly just already, based on the end of this project, we have a whole slew of projects that did not fall into the analysis range, but will be in a couple of years. So we want to continue monitoring those and revisit that. And then we certainly also want to keep collecting the local, state, priority projects and getting them into that. And then we also want to maybe add some other variables. Like one of the things I was interested in is just looking at corridor level. Even just not specific safety projects, but something I was looking at in the report. If you added up, a lot of the safety gains have been on our high entry network, like the Cortez Road has had a number of safety improvements implemented, whether it be lighting or the pedestrian hybrid beacons. And some of those didn't make it into the analysis, but if you look at just before and after the high injury network segment, there's been a huge decrease in total crashes as well as KSI and bike head crashes. And as I alluded to in the, the safety targets, that obviously doesn't replace our data-driven approach, and we're certainly going to leverage these and see which safety countermeasures are working best, and pairing that with the cost and basically prioritizing where projects where the biggest safety gains can be had for least amount of money, basically. And here's URLs to both the report and the draft dashboard. Those are going to change at well, at least the dashboard is, it's currently hosted by one of our consultants, but going forward, we're going to download it, host it ourselves, and then updating it. Yeah, it's certainly something that felt like was a worthwhile effort, and going forward is something we'd like to continue doing. So recommended action similar to TIA is just recommending board adoption of this study. And I can take any questions you guys have them, or suggestions for different approaches when we revisit this.
Are there any committee questions or comments? Yes, Alyssa.
Did you guys compare how these lined up to the crash modification factor clearinghouse that FHWA has? Like, are we close? Are we better? Are we?
I think we did, especially for roundabouts, I think it aligned like the anticipated percentage decrease was pretty much like exactly on par. And I think we did that for the others too, but
That might be helpful if, I don't know, maybe if that's part of the report of saying like, hey, in general, we can use these as we fact checked and they're fully applicable.
yeah, that they're working in the local context. Definitely.
A small minor comment, I guess, is that 150 foot radius buffer is pretty small for a signalized intersection. You won't even get back to the back of turn lanes sometimes. And so your signalized intersections in future analysis, you may want to look at a larger radius, particularly if the intersection is being greatly modified or say replaced with a roundabout or something like that. You might do a better job of getting a snapshot of before and after benefit.
Yeah, that's something we'll keep in mind. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Okay, staff are asking for committee action on this one as well. This is different than the other study. This is a report of findings as opposed to one that's making recommendations for, say, strategies or approach in the future, although it's implicit that they would apply similar analysis methods in the future.
So move.
All right, have a motion to recommend board approval.
Second.
And a second. Any discussion on the motion? None. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
Our next item is the Ed Smith planning study. Did not see the man, so some other killing today.
Good morning, everybody. Jared Schneider with Kinley Warren and also Trevor Poole with Kinley Warren as well. So today we wanted to give you kind of an update on the culmination of the Ed Smith Stadium study. This has been a study we've been working on for about over a year now. So I got some familiar faces here. Obviously, Al Murray, Alyssa and Paula were big parts of this, as well as MPO staff and other stakeholders that are not here today. Really, we had a lot of stakeholder engagement early on with Sarasota County and the city of Sarasota. That includes getting out there on bikes. So we biked it, we walked it, we drove it, met with the Baltimore Orioles as well as public stakeholders. You know, this is really a MPO process to look at mobility around Ed Smith Ballpark, but it also included several neighborhoods within the area, 6 different neighborhoods. So what we were focused on was a corridor approach, and this is great to dovetail off of the other agenda items. We looked at a corridor approach, but then also a toolkit of multimodal improvements that just dovetails off of what we heard, and looked at some short-term, midterm, and long-term improvements. We provided estimated costs, and Nick hit on that pretty well. We were obviously looking at a range of costs over time. And then we always like to show concepts with potential funding options. To orient y'all, what we're looking at is US 301 on the west, and then on the east is Beneva Road, and then Fruitville Road to 17th Street on the north. We're talking about around 10,000 folks in this area, y'all. So it's a pretty big area. And then to layer that on, we had multiple jurisdictions, obviously. Yellow are the city streets, the blue is the county streets, and the red that I'm gonna do a puppet dance now, were the FDOT streets. So we're well aware of those, so it's Fruitville. So definitely some coordination required on all of this. What we wanted to do today is, you saw the initial recommendations earlier last year. So today we wanted to kind of boil that up for y'all. So Trevor's gonna run through, we've got 5 corridors that we're gonna show y'all, and then highlight Ed Smith, and then come back to you on next steps.
Yeah, thanks, Jared. So like Jared said, we wanted to kind of show you the top 5 prioritized corridors from the study. You'll see the rankings on the right side, and these were developed using the MPO's prioritization tool. So we'll jump right into 12th Street. The segment that was prioritized from 12th Street runs from US 301 to Tuttle Avenue. This consists of a lot of industrial development, as well as the Ed Smith Stadium on that eastern portion of this segment. So some of our recommendations here were to increase pedestrian access and bicycle access using a protected bike lane, as well as have access control, reducing curb cuts, and including a landscape median. Now, this rendering shown here is more of a conservative approach. We also had an approach that was a little more aspirational, that went down to 2 lanes with a multi-use trail, and a couple more improvements for pedestrian and bicyclists. Moving on to 17th Street, the existing conditions here were high number of crashes as well as access concerns. So to combat this, we included a multi-use trail on the southern portion of 17th Street that would be in hope to connect to 17th Street trail that leads to 17th Street Park, also Circus Trail to the south, also a landscape median you'll see here. Moving on to Beneva Road, concerns here were mainly intersections with Fruitville Road, Circus Boulevard, and 17th Street. So a lot of intersection improvements for safety, as well as lighting improvements. Moving on to Tuttle Avenue. Now this roadway was a really important roadway to the neighborhoods because it contains Tuttle Elementary, Ed Smith Stadium is directly adjacent to it, and also the parks on the northern portion of Tuttle Avenue. So utilizing Tuttle Walkway Park as kind of that anchor for bike ped access, we've included another mid-block crossing, as well as improvements to the sidewalk network. And then lastly, Lockwood Ridge, this 2-lane roadway. Our main concern here was roadway lighting. There were a lot of crashes here that were a direct result of limited lighting in the area. So including better roadway lighting, and then also a multi-use trail on the eastern portion of this roadway. And then lastly, we just wanted to highlight some specific Ed Smith Stadium related improvements. Mainly game day operations, including wayfinding signage improvements, as well as traffic operations. And then last thing I wanted to highlight was, not only these 5 corridor projects are included in this projects dashboard, but also every single corridor and their related projects are included in the projects dashboard. And this is located on the MPO's website. Now I'll flip it back to Jared for some implementation and some funding.
As we already talked about today, we know there's more needs than funding oftentimes. So what we really tried to do is with each of the corridors that we've presented, there's a range of short-term, mid-term, and long-term improvements. And Trevor talked a little bit about the prioritization. So 12th Street, 17th Street, we're higher up, but that doesn't mean there aren't short-term things that we can do. In the city of Sarasota and Sarasota County in particular are already doing some of those things. So we looked at click to fix 311, crosswalk markings, some of those items that don't require large capital improvements. Oftentimes we're looking at how do we accomplish that without throwaway projects. So there's definitely a range of safety countermeasures that, again, Nick kind of hit on, so there's overlap there. Funding, again, it's always interesting. We follow a lot of the grants. We're just trying to say, I think the point here, be adaptable and flexible. But we did start to look at some potentially eligible project examples for each of the federal state grants that are out there. So I think that's something that just, what we're seeing around the state and the country right now, stay flexible and get creative. So we do have, from build, which actually are due next month. So those are coming out. So it's a perfect time to be looking at for next year, ATIP, HSIP, Safe House to School, as well as the TAP funding, obviously. So yeah, we just wanted to wrap it up and thank everybody again. I think this has been a good example of a multi-jurisdictional collaboration. I think it's now just keeping the momentum going. So that's where we're at right now, just trying to boil everything up. And then the Orioles obviously have been a great partner as well with some of our observations. So I think it's a really good example of cross coordination. That will leave any questions you might have.
Any questions or comments from committee members? I don't see any. All right. So again, this is one of our action items. So staff are asking for our recommendation to the board.
Recommend MPO board adoption.
Got a motion to recommend adoption
Second.
and a second. Any discussion on the motion? None. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Transitioning to section 6 of our agenda. First up is the DOT report. Ms. Smith.
The legislative session is scheduled to kick off tomorrow and run through March 13th. It's an accelerated session, so I imagine things are going to move pretty quickly. My team and I have been working on the member projects, the legislative appropriation requests. As of late last week, we had 30 projects for District 1, a House total of 167 million and a Senate total of 79 million. My team and I have been sending out emails with questionnaires and certain information that we have to provide the legislative team up in Tallahassee. So if your jurisdiction has one of those emails and they haven't responded, please do so. As Nina mentioned earlier, we're getting ready to close out the current UPWP cycle. The current one will conclude June 30th. And the one we'll start preparing is for fiscal years 27 and 28. The Office of Policy Planning is the unit that my liaison team falls under in the department. We were recently moved to a new division. And so there was an overall look at all of the forms that the department and the MPO worked together to do. One of those is the UPWP as well as the joint certification. I think the joint certification form that we have to fill out together every year was 17 pages. It's now 3. So that cycle ought to be, or that process ought to move a lot simpler through this year. I did also want to share some work program successes. Because the legislative cycle was accelerated, that also means that our work program development cycle that we undertake in the fall was accelerated. These are district-wide numbers, but this region had a particularly large amount of contingency funding. On July 1st, for fiscal year 26, we had 72 projects, and fiscal year 27, we had 48. And by November 5th, when we closed the cycle in 26, we had 97 projects, and 27, we had 62. So that was an increase for fiscal year 26 of 25 projects, or 35%. And in 27, it was an increase of 14 projects, or 29%. So overall, we did an increase in production of 39 projects, or 32.5%, which, if you don't know, is really exciting for us. That's a pretty massive increase in production. And a lot of that was, coordination with Ryan and Dave and co. So
it means we're getting stuff done, not getting
correct.
stuck.
That is
in the report. Okay.
Yes. That's all I have. Happy to at least attempt to answer any questions.
Any committee questions for FDOT this morning? All right, well, thank you, Christy. Next up, we have several MPO reports, starting with draft 2026 project priorities. So it's in here.
Okay, so we sent out the draft 2026 list last week. So if you haven't had a chance to look at it yet, we still have plenty of time before we take it back to this committee and to the board for adoption. So basically 2 parts to my report on this. The first part is the annual spiel. The draft list was put together by putting together the applications that were submitted by the jurisdictions. So if you submitted a project, you should see it somewhere on this list, unless we had communication and we decided to pull the project. If there are any errors, any corrections that need to be made, please send me an email, set up a meeting with me. Let's discuss it and fix the list. And you may also get some emails from me as I work on clarifying projects and just making sure that we have all the information that we need for this list. So this is a draft. We will continue working on it. You'll get a revised version of this in March that we'll recommend for MPO board adoption. So the second part to the presentation is that it looks a whole lot different than it has in previous years. Yeah. So we're also open to recommendations on how this is working. But let me give you an idea of kind of what we were hoping to accomplish with this revised version. With the 2050 now adopted, many of those funding programs and the rules tied to them did not carry over into the 2050 LRTP from the 2045. So many of those categories, like the FDOT partnership program, the MMEC, those no longer exist in the 2050 LRTP. So there was sort of a need to reorganize the list anyway. The second one is we wanted to draw a clearer relationship in the list between the LRTP and the project priorities. And this was more so in using the list as a public facing document, so that at the start, there's an understanding that at the core of the project priorities is the 2050 LRTP. We all in this room know that, but when a member of the public or somebody else maybe looks at the list, it wasn't immediately clear, right? So to also use it as an opportunity to sort of inform and educate. And we also wanted to break the list down to be more consistent with the new cost feasible plan. So when you look at the way that the list is organized now, right at the start, we begin with our program project. So these are all of the projects that have an FPID number attached to them. They exist in the work program. And as an MPO priority, we ask that FDOT look at this list first to make sure that these projects have funding lined up to move these projects through to construction. Some of the feedback that we have gotten in the past was that our FDOT partners didn't always know which projects were the top priorities, right? So in this way, we're splitting out those program projects and then lining up the pipeline and then the funding programs next. And then we also included a section under program projects for those projects that are pursuing state and federal funding opportunities that may not necessarily be eligible for SU. And then also those projects that are programmed but are not MPO priorities, or more so local needs that are in the work program that should be given consideration. And then from there, we move into the unfunded priorities. These are projects that are in those 5-year time bands, and we have them organized by those 5-year time bands. So in the 2050 LRTP, projects that are in the pipeline are fully funded through construction. And so now our FDOT partners can take a look at the list and say, okay, we've got the program projects, and then in the next 5 years, these are the projects that we have lined up, and then the following 5 years, rather than just bundling everything together. And then we move into the funding programs, and we have them broken out by the funding programs. We also wanted to completely separate out the unfunded needs. These are projects that did not have any funding revenues tied to them in the 2050 plan, but that are nevertheless consistent with the LRTP. And if funding was made available or fell from the sky, they would be consistent with our plan and could be funded. And then we wanted to completely separate the local needs from the LRTP project. So we maintained the list of local needs. These are not MPO priorities. They are not currently consistent with the LRTP. And so we include them as an appendix rather than as a main part of the list of project priorities. Because what we saw in previous years that there was a lot of confusion about the MPO priorities and then the local needs. So by splitting them out, hopefully this creates a little bit more clarity. And then we'll attach the cost feasible project tables as well, so that there's a clear understanding of these are the projects that are eligible, and this is how they made the priority list. So you don't have to tell me how you feel about it now, but I'd be happy to hear it. This is definitely a draft. We are always working to improve this. So I'd be happy to hear your recommendations now or later on how you interpret it.
Are there any committee comments or questions? Yes.
Comments, well, definitely different, but not in a bad way. But I've been recently notified that I have two projects, two additional ones to add to the list, and I'll get that information to you. One being Bee Ridge Road. There was a recent board action in the last 6 months or so in regards to the hi-hat development that's coming forward. To fund Bee Ridge Road widening to 4 lanes between Bent Tree and Lorraine Road. So they'll be paying 50% and we will be paying 50% unless we can, get money to fall out of the sky from some appropriations or something. And then the other one is related to a trail, specifically the Mount Celery. If you guys don't know what that is, it's a big mound of dirt that over time has become a park and not necessarily the stormwater facility that it actually is. But there is a trail system that's there, and we need some help shoring up that trail. So we'll be submitting those as well. And our board will be we'll be taking our stuff to the board on February 10th for adoption, so we can make that February 20th, I think that date is.
Yes, yeah, later in February, and that.
Yes, please reiterate that sort of drop dead date for getting all this, if for the last minute changes.
Sure. If you can get it to us by February, let's say mid to end February, that'd be great. I will send a follow-up email and include specific dates. But we definitely want to make all of these changes before the list comes back to the committee. And then that also reminded me that every single one of the projects that was submitted to the MPO does need to go to your jurisdictions for approval. So you all need to submit a list to the MPO that says our board or commission approves this, and then that will kind of complete the application process. So we do ask for that list to be approved and signed list to be submitted by February 20th, I believe it is. So if you don't have that lined up on your local agendas yet, please go ahead and start working on that.
Yes, Sally.
So overall comment, the list looks good, like the formatting, it's a good refresh. I do have a couple of things. There's 2 projects that are missing from the list. And then there will be 1 modification. So our commission approved our project priorities past Monday. And the limits for one of the projects is the limits and the type of work is different, so I'll have to modify that for the project, so that means that it will definitely be from the unfunded list that's at the bottom and will be in the resiliency program. And then I see that Sarasota County submitted Tuttle Avenue. We had Tuttle Avenue in our project priority list, but we did not submit it as a project because we wanted to support Sarasota County's Tuttle Avenue project as part of the Ed Smith Stadium project as well. Sure. So we wanted to, if you could add City of Sarasota under the jurisdiction as a support.
And if you can send me the details on those other projects. We'll work through those.
Yeah, it's Booker High School, so we got the letter that we were awarded Safe Routes to School, and we submitted the I included it as part of the project priority list, but obviously I didn't submit the application. I believe we submitted the application to you all when we submitted the app last year. Yeah, and the other one was one that we discussed, Fruitville, TSMNL. FDOT said that our people and FDOT, it's a little different.
Okay, so separate them out.
Albie, on the Booker one, what are you planning on by Booker?
Booker High School.
Yeah,
It's new sidewalks and crossings and curb extensions.
is there nothing on Myrtle? It's just all like on Orange and.
Yes, correct.
Okay, other questions or comments? I'll say I like the new format. I like having some stuff up front to sort of manage expectations. I think a lot of people don't understand that you are effectively constrained by the cost feasible plan. And so having something up front about that, I think helps quite a bit. So thanks for that. Do you need any action this morning?
Not right now, no.
Okay, well, talk to your commissioner council if you haven't, get your adopted list into staff, please. Right. Next, speaking of cert review, Ryan.
Yeah, thank you. So we did have our quadrennial back in the fall of 2025. We did have a limited virtual participation from our federal partners. They were not able to attend in person, and they will likely not be here in January at our board meeting to announce this either. So just get myself and Dave. But we did go through the process. It was much amended, I would say, this time around. It was only about a half day. We did talk through the requirements, and ultimately it was a fairly straightforward process. Ended up with three noteworthy practices Grace previously mentioned to do with our organizational foundation, our safety, and some of our website work. There was no corrective actions during the process. There was also 2 recommendations, which we've already addressed related to the tip. One being page numbers from all the LRTP. We were kind of in a transition point at that point because we were still adopting. And the other was to blend the tip and the GeoHub that we have on our website. So we did add the tip layers to that GeoHub as well. So those were already corrected prior to the report being sent out. So have addressed those 2 recommendations. We feel pretty confident about the process. We won't be going back through this until November, September, October of 2029. So that is it for our quadrennial. We're also going to be working with Christie and DOT here in January to work with we think much improved shorter joint certification process. So we're looking forward to doing that, and we'll have some outcomes from that, I think, probably by March-ish timeline. So that's all I have on that front. We do appreciate the participation you all had, feedback that we had in the federal certification process. I know they're down to about 3 people all statewide, and then limited on travel. So it was a bit of a different process this time around, but we look forward to work with them in the future. So that's all I have on that front.
Okay, any questions or comments on the certification review? Seeing none, thank you, Ryan. Next is update on resiliency study or.
Just in general, I will say, we agreed to kind of dissolve and move the TRAG into its kind of a TAC conversation format. So I wanted to maintain at least once every other quarter, put a transportation and resiliency related item on the agenda. Mainly to just update items as previously mentioned, Grace also mentioned during our top 10 strategic priorities, watershed asset analysis. I know we had a kickoff and conversation. That project is now finally underway. We have a team on board working on that. Cambridge Systematics and White House Group out of Fort Lauderdale. They'll be helping us continue our process to evaluate our transportation system as it relates to resiliency along our watersheds and impacts to not just the transportation system, but the surrounding built environment. So we're excited to have that underway. Should be about a 12-month process. And we'll obviously reach out to you and work closely with you, as well as our other partners, regional planning councils, et cetera, trying to get this process done and underway. So that's one of those items. And then also just wanted to follow up briefly, as discussed with the new project priorities. We do have a resiliency bucket. We're going to continue to emphasize the importance of addressing resiliency projects. We don't have as many on the list as I think we'd like. However, given the cost estimates, they are quite costly. They're time intensive and they're expensive. So we will continue to address the resiliency projects identified in the long range plan. However, we're going to continue to need to be creative. Looking at federal opportunities, state grant opportunities to kind of backfill some of our financial shortfalls when it comes to our state funds. So those are the two items I had. Happy to take. This is kind of an open discussion item. If there's anything on the resiliency front any of you all would like to add, now's your time. Otherwise, we'll continue to keep you updated and posted on our progress as well.
Any questions or comments on resilience? As part of the scope, please encourage your consultant to engage the local governments. I can't believe Manatee County's alone in having done some of this already, and
No, you're not.
getting to a point of say vulnerability assessment and reporting now. There are facilities of, it's broader than just the transportation infrastructure, but for the transportation part of it, there are evacuation hubs. There are regionally significant facilities that are vulnerable or on that threshold. And so I think we can provide information that'll be useful too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's our first goal. I know we just got the team fully on board. I know we had that brief kickoff to get your thoughts on the scope. Now we've got it kind of in place. We'll certainly be in touch. Shortly, we'll get a meeting scheduled out and outreach scheduled out to you all as soon as possible. So I will appreciate all the support from that going forward.
So, I mean, any of the rest of you that looking at that in public works or utilities or natural resources, whatever your departments are that look at those kinds of things, it's something to pay attention to. It's important. If for no other reason that it seems to be the way some of the funding is doing. So it can help you help yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at there's 2 river roads on here. And I think one or both of them, some of these things should probably be included in the widening and the improvements.
Agreed.
So, talk more.
Sure, we'll work on that. And that's the whole one, right? We've identified these. This is kind of a next step, and it's another layer of evolution, I think, in the resiliency process. We were just mandated in the last authorization to take a look at this. It's a moving target, and we'll see what, I'll add my last piece of reauthorization coming up. Talk with your legislators, reemphasize the importance of infrastructure dollars, transportation dollars being spent on transportation. We're going to continue to do our work with our nationwide groups, TRB and AMPO, to make sure they're aware of our position and having a greater involvement, potentially greater formula dollars spent in our area. We did not perform overwhelmingly good. I would say in the discretionary grant program, we're 49th out of 52 with the territories included. So didn't perform that well when it came to getting discretionary grants into our region and to the state as a whole. So there has been a general consensus and thought process at the state level to emphasize the importance of formula dollars. We know how that process works and we know how to get those onto projects. So that's something that's going to be really important over the next several months as they start to propose new language and authorization language Congress level, but we'll see how that works out. What we got?
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next item 7 is election of a new 2026 chair. As you noticed, I am your vice chair and I'm chairing today. it turns out that there's one simple trick MPOs hate, but they can't stop you from doing it. If you work for the MPO, you can no longer be chair. So Megan is here as staff today and not serving as chair. So we need a new chair from Sarasota County, unincorporated or its jurisdiction. So we can open up nominations now. Ready?
Good deal.
Longboat Key is eligible for vote.
Yes.
I'm the alternate.
Thank you.
Oh.
Sorry.
Jim just served.
Yeah. I'm Brandon. I mean, I didn't think Carl was Jen.
Anthony.
Oh,
Anthony,
Sarasota County.
Anthony's Northport too.
I'd rather have served as a vice chair first.
That's way of delaying for a couple of years.
We try and keep the rule pretty straightforward. Usually we have a script available, for anybody sitting in the chair as well. There's kind of walks you through the items and what to say. And other than that, it's just reviewing agendas and just being here and letting us know if you want to be here so that Claire can sit in.
Thank you. But I don't work on script, so it felt awkward, that's why.
Say it
I
loud, Paula.
nominate Paula.
I said if there was no volunteers, I would. Say
Okay.
that loud. I'm like.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
We have a nomination for Paula Wiggins. Are there any other nominations? Can I get a motion to close nomination? All right, nominations are closed. It's not something we really need to vote on with just one nominee, and without objection, Paula Wiggins will be your chair for the remainder of 2026.
Vice chair.
Clark is vice.
Your vice chair
Yeah,
last year.
no, this year, that's why I'm here today. We did it last
Okay.
October meeting. It was Megan as chair and me as vice chair for this year, and so Megan legally found a
Jump ship.
loophole. Was chair today, or vice chair, serving as chair today and vice chair for the rest of the year. We only needed to fill the vacancy created. Right. So, congratulations, Paula, you're chair for the rest of the year. I know I've done a sixth of the job for you, but I will not ask to share your compensation. So that takes care of that. We can go once around the table, go to my left, Nina.
Sure. So, I would just like to announce some new staff, Megan Louie, new planning manager joined us last month. We also have Jane Lee as our newest transportation planner, and today is her very first day. So you'll be seeing her at upcoming meetings and getting emails from her as well. And then next week or the week thereafter, 2 weeks, we have a new office manager and assistant clerk to the board starting as well. And her name's Elizabeth. Kelly, I'm sorry. Kelly. So we'll introduce her as well at our next meeting. Yeah, it's a lot has happened over the last month.
Clark,
Yes.
if I may, this will be my last TAC meeting as director. The board has already, contracted with Ryan to be director effective basically February 7th. I leave the place in good hands. Some of you I haven't known a long time. I think Clark and Paula, I've worked with you for going on 20+ years in different roles, even before the MPO. And it's been I think we've accomplished a lot. We've done a lot of great transportation projects over the years. We've sort of started turning the tide a little bit on safety, and you all get a lot of credit for that in your roles, and makes a difference. And when the MPO perspective, we do see positive differences taking place and a lot of accomplishments from a diverging diamond at I-75 and University to new sidewalks everywhere you go. And then once they're done, they look like every other little stretch of road out there. And, you know, once the new signal is in and working well, it still feels like you're waiting forever for the lights to change. But we are making progress, and it's all, you know, due to what you and the jurisdictions and the elected officials support. So it's been a great experience for me. I appreciate working with each and every one of you.
Right. Thanks for that reminder, and thanks for your time with the MPO, starting as a representative and later as the executive director. You've been good to the MPO. It's been a time when there's been a lot of changes. Not so much that what was done in the past was wrong, it's just that technology and rules and best practices and things like that evolved, and I think you helped this MPO evolve with that. So thanks again for your service, Dave. Elby? Nothing? But
So for the CTST, I saw that they sent out the highway safety matrix, the ranking of Florida cities. I think that would be something helpful if that's sent out to the TAC also. So the city of Sarasota received this from a citizen, was the first time it came across my desk. So we've gone from the third most dangerous to the second most dangerous city for pedestrians and bicycles. So I think just helping to bring that up to the MPO so that they have that information, that they're hearing about it through the technical route, and maybe also highlighting the high injury networks and kind of highlighting that data a little bit too, I think would be helpful for the people making the decisions.
Yeah, we just can't get off that list.
So. Nothing.
All right, well, I have tons of them. So the county has been quite busy. Our board had their recent retreat in December. Transportation has, last year was the year of stormwater, to this year is the year of transportation. They have a number of there's two board policies that they adopted. Both of them revolve around our transportation network and then the funding of our what they call the 7 major road projects, which include Lorraine Road, the 3 segments of Lorraine, and there's Fruitville Road, the 2 segments of those, as well as Bee Ridge Road and Minnesota Beach Road. So we got a lot of road projects going on. Some of our strategic action items that we'll be working on is wayfinding master plan. So that'll kind of go into, we can incorporate one of the low hanging fruit on the Ed Smith Stadium with that. Looking at our thoroughfare plan, story mapping, that's something that we've been trying to work on for some time now, but hopefully we'll get this done now that luckily we didn't have any hurricanes last year, so I was not way late on that one. And some of the other things that we'll also be working on is the update to the master trails plan and the bicycle pedestrian master plan, which we're looking to combine those. So we'll be involving our municipalities with that again as well as we go through that process. One of the items that we had as a strategic action item last year was to come up with the concept of a pilot project for quarterly transportation forums that'll be for the public to get to know what it is that we do in transportation, and that'll also involve our field services group as well. Just to let folks know that we don't just stand by and 7 people looking at a ditch being dug, or sitting behind our desk. And let's see, and then Minnesota Key Road is now open. So if anybody's down in that area, that the temporary road is now open. That opened up on the 10th. So yeah, we're quite busy. And again, the 2026 is the year of transportation in Sarasota County.
awesome. It means it. Grace?
Oh, nothing. I'm not used to it, sorry.
That's that's an acceptable response.
The only other thing I'll mention, I said Pam Barr, who was the liaison for this MPO, her last day was Thursday. She decided instead of a Port Charlotte January, she'd rather have an Ohio January, so. We are preparing to advertise that position, so we hope to get, you know, a dedicated liaison back online pretty soon.
I'll just say that with Megan's joining the MPO now, so I'll be taking her place as Breeze's representative for the TAC.
Welcome back.
I know
I've never been here before.
Yeah, I do just have a couple of things about, I'm following Paula's statement about transportation. December was a busy month for transit at Breeze too. We had a lot of board actions, but a couple more interesting ones is that we did receive authorization to for the purchase of the software to enable the commingling of our services. So we'll be able to work with a single vendor to coordinate our on-demand and our paratransit service, and working towards efficiencies in that process. And then also we received a purchase agreement for the mobile fare payment software. So making progress on enabling that for our buses to make that process much easier and kind of bring us to date technologically with some areas. So that.
No, I want to share a news, City of Bradenton being awarded Safe Street for All grant for $350,000. And I would like to say thank you to MPO for providing, especially Nina, providing us crash data that I incorporated in our narrative. And MPO also provided us a letter of recommendation. So it was a win.
Pretty exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Is it for planning or implementation? You building something?
Planning.
And I have nothing to add. How about MPO staff and the?
Nothing additional.
All right. Well, coming up, there's an MPO regular and joint meeting. The agenda says that that's at Doubletree, so we convinced Charlotte County Board to drive all the way up here. And we're gonna fit in that little ring.
Correct.
All right.
We'll be working with them on that. We're finalizing the agenda, so you can see that very shortly.
Okay, and then for us, the next technical advisory committee meeting is going to be March 9, 2026 at 10 a.m. in this room. There's nothing else, then we are adjourned.